You know, America's founding fathers were a pretty awesome collection of guys. Famous military tacticians, multilingual intellectuals, eccentric inventors, or, as we'd call them today, elitists. They had guts, they had ambition, they had a vision. However, here are some things they didn't have. A time machine, a crystal ball, precognition. Basically, they didn't have any way to foresee or even anticipate the numerous social and technological changes that their descendants would have to adjust to. Most of them couldn't have foreseen an end to, say, slavery, for example, and they certainly never expected women to be voting. Hell, even Jefferson, the smarty pants to end all smarty pantses on the team, didn't know he'd wind up making the thing so huge by buying a bunch of crap land from France. In fact, earlier in his career, Jefferson was against big government stuff like the Louisiana Purchase, which wound up being only one of the most important things he ever did. So basically, anyone whose 21st century political outlook begins or in some way revolves around getting back to what the founders intended is probably a fucking idiot. We don't know what they really intended because they've been dead for a couple centuries, and even if we could know, it really wouldn't help us that much for the same reason. Most of them just wanted to get out from under British military and economic control. All the rhetoric about individual rights got co-opted as a broader rallying cry later on. These were great guys, but they were men, not gods. They didn't build their initial political structures around predicting what we might need 200 years down the road. They built it so it could be a solid starting point for all the new systems and mechanisms they'd need to put in place for this crazy scheme to work once the British were really gone. Following the Constitution like some kind of sacred scripture that you cannot deviate from is like driving your car off a cliff because you haven't updated your fucking GPS in a year and it still thinks there's a bridge there. And the thing is, they didn't want us to remember or look at them this way. They actively took steps to avoid us using them or their work as unchangeable templates of perfection. George Washington, for example, rejected every attempt to confer a king-like level of ceremonial respect upon the presidency, and the framers themselves made sure that the Constitution could be amended on the off chance that they didn't get it 100% right the first time. America does not work because of sacred traditions and long-standing institutions. It works because it was the first successful Western nation to be built on a foundation of rejecting sacred traditions and long-standing institutions. We're the first DIY superpower, a country founded by guys who looked at centuries of monarchical rule by divine right of kings handed down from God himself and said, nah, that bullshit doesn't cut it anymore. We're gonna do something new. If we truly want to govern ourselves in the same spirit that the Founding Fathers did, we should treat our founding documents the same way they treated the various British and or colonial documents that were in place before the Revolution. Not as sacrosanct scripture, but as a draft in need of refinement. So how about we stop fucking around, give the right-wing constitutionalist crybaby some yarn to play with, put on some coffee, bust out the red pens and the whiteout, keep the stuff that still works, junk the stuff that doesn't anymore, and build an America that will keep working in the 21st century. In other words, stop trying to figure out what the Founding Fathers would have wanted and start doing what the Founding Fathers did.